Hello, and thanks for tuning in to another Formscan video coming especially on Tuesday, the 20th of August to preview York. And I'm delighted to be joined by Tanya Stevenson. Tanya, York, I suppose, always a massive one in the flat calendar. You're going to be racing all 4 days, when you look forward to every year, I suppose.
Yes, I am going to be racing all 4 days. I cannot wait. We used to have a bookmaker's pitch here, my father and I, in what was the Silvering, and then we moved into Tattersalls. So apparently, I mean, once again, a bit like Royal Ascot, apparently I'm closing in my 50th Ebor meeting. So that's really scary. As obviously I wasn't standing up on the pitch that long ago, but there was no babysitters then, so I had to come along. And I just, from then, you fall in love with a meeting like York. Why can't you? And this year, I think, has surpassed many years when you look at the Juddmonte lineup. But we'll get into that later.
Yeah, getting the kind of first 2 days of declarations there through, and like it's definitely a card, a fairly memorable one. Like you said, the Juddmonte has a bit of everything, but we'll chat about that in a bit, I suppose. And yeah, I've never actually been to York, but it's definitely one on the bucket list. I must try and get there next year. But yeah, this year's first 2 days anyway so far from what we've got in through the declarations are definitely a cracker. And we'll kind of start off, just for the viewers, we'll do a couple of races on Wednesday and Thursday, and just a look at the Nunthorpe as well on Friday as well, even though we've no declarations yet, but we'll have a quick talk about it anyway. But we'll start off on the Wednesday, and the first race we'll have a chat about will be the 225, the Tattersalls Acomb Stakes. It's a race for the 2-year-olds over the 7 furlongs, and the market has this as a bit of a 2-horse race. And the 2 first-time out winners, Ruling Court and the Lion in Winter, for the Godolphin and Coolmore teams, seem to be a step apart in the market terms. Anyway, Ruling Court 11 to 10, the Lion in Winter 15 to 8. Tanya, is it as much of a 2-horse race as the market's suggesting here?
Yeah, I think it could well be. In fairness, I mean, I know it's premature, but we've got what is the favourite for the 2,000 guineas in Ruling Court, and the Lion in Winter, who's in the glut, just sitting behind. So you get kind of a yardstick as soon as they run these first races. These big old 2-year-olds, they're thrust into the hype kind of mobile. Ruling Court, though, was rather breathtaking at Sandown. And then now when you sit back and you get a grasp of the form, he beat Pertemps Warrior, who was really, really pacey at Newbury recently, and just failed to hold off a nice juvenile in Hopewell Rock at Newbury. But Pertemps Warrior's got plenty of pace, so then you get an idea of how the pace was run. And then Stanhope Gardens, who was further behind, has come out and beat High Season and far ahead at Beverley. Now, Ruling Court, ordinarily you're chatting quite blasé when they've won by a length, but Ruling Court won by 5 going away, and there was never any doubt, was never under pressure. It was good ground apparently, but it was rained on good ground. So there is a really nice horse, very green. He had a very high head carriage, and in the closing furlong it was to one side. That's just pure greenness. So how much more is there to come? And York is a very fair track. And then you've got complete contrast in the Lion in Winter, who was not ridden by Ryan Moore. The Lion in Winter really did surprise with acceleration that was so impressive, beating Ides of March. That was in third in the end. But the Lion in Winter and Ruling Court have just got a burgeon of really higher class future entries, and it's hard to weigh up. And there are some really lovely juveniles going up against them, but you understand why they're so far clear in the market, these two. If there is another one to consider, I would consider the old tough hour Chaplain, who perhaps needs to go really fast to show his best ability. As you saw at Goodwood, it wasn't until they started to kick on down that hill that Mr. Chaplain came through. But even that, hopefully it's a good starter. I don't know what you think about the pair of them, but Ruling Court for me out of the two.
Yeah, I suppose, look, he had a massive reputation coming into that Sandown maiden. Actually cost 2.3 million at the breeze up sales. I'd probably be with you there. I'd probably take him just over the Lion in Winter. Now, the Lion in Winter, that maiden he ran in the Curragh was really, really strong. Curragh Wood was in second. I think he had run in a Curragh maiden about a month before that as well. He was third that day, and I think 5 winners came out of that maiden. So he's a really good yardstick to start off on, I suppose. And then, like you mentioned, Ides of March, who was the first string, he went out and won his maiden recently enough for the Curragh as well for Ballydoyle. So I think the form of that is really solid, but he's kind of bred kind of overstaying pedigree, I suppose, out of a half such as Venus de Milo, who was kind of a good middle distance filly for Ballydoyle. And like you mentioned, he was really green in that Curragh race and just got going at the end. You'd imagine maybe further down the line he'll be stepping up in trip, whereas Wootton Court really showed the pace to be, like you said, a real 2,000 guineas contender next year. You can see why he's favoured for it now. So maybe at this stage of their career, Wootton Court over this trip, he will be quite tough to beat. If I was going to give one a mention at a bigger price outside of the top two, although I do think they could be a bit of a step ahead of the rest, I think Wimbledon Hawkeye has experience at this level, I suppose. He was third in the superlative last time. Kind of a few furlongs out, you thought he might have been dropped off the back of the screen, but really got going towards the end. Probably, again, similar to the Lion in Winter, could be one for stepping up and trip further down the line. But solid enough horse there, 18-1, could run into a place there if you get 3 places. But agree with you there, Wootton Court, really breathtaking there in Sandown, wasn't he? Showed a real pace to win by 5 lengths in a race like that. It was no mean feat, I suppose, and he might just have the better of the Lion in Winter at this stage of their career. I suppose I'd agree with you on that one. But we'll go on to the 3 o'clock then. Another cracker, Group 2 Great Voltigeur Stakes. We've got the classic winner, Los Angeles, coming here after winning the Irish Derby. I suppose bidding to follow in the footsteps of his stablemate Continuous, winning this en route to the Ledger. But stiff opposition enough, I suppose, in King's Gambit, who was second here when he met a course specialist, I suppose, in Alflela, running in York. Look, Los Angeles 6-4. He's actually easing a bit in the market. I think he was 5-4 last night. The only question mark I'd have about Los Angeles is this kind of rattling hard ground that you're probably likely to get in York. But apart from that, I'd probably say he might be a class above these. I'm not sure what you think, Tanya.
I couldn't believe he was so big. When I saw at the entry stage, I thought, oh, there's a nice race for Los Angeles. And I do appreciate that Illinois was there. And I thought, oh, this is handy. Aidan has got every opportunity to have either or run or have the 1-2 in either order. But then when I saw that Los Angeles would be entered, I thought, yes, I agree with you. The ground has got to be a worry. But this is the ideal opportunity, I thought, for Ryan, if he is indeed on, he's on Los Angeles. Because York, you can sort of accentuate your large stride as they turn for home. I think he may go out in front on Los Angeles and then just continually wind it up as they turn for home and say, just accentuate the horse's class. Because if you look at the form, Dear a Mile, Jim Crowley's aboard this, and Jim Crowley will already know the strength of the form for King's Gambit because he just sat behind that on Alpha in the small field recently. But Dear a Mile was well held anyway by Los Angeles at Epsom. And Los Angeles was incredibly green because we're all watching, weren't we? And said, oh, there's one for the Curragh. And he's done that. He is an enormous beast. So I think that's where we worry about the good firm ground. Dear a Mile for me probably can't reverse the form. Then we go to Illinois, who you look at the run in the Queen's Vase at Royal Ascot, excellent. But the form behind Highbury and Birdman, would they bring the form to Los Angeles? No, but then that was a good run to against Sauzet in France, because Sauzet had just come from being in the French Derby. But still, Illinois probably wants further than this. And if Ryan is to wind it up. And then we get to King's Gambit, who, well, Royal Ascot was the one that got away. And then at York, what worries me last time out when it got beat by Alpha Layla was the time was so slow. It showed you how pedestrian it was. So being really mean, and I picked the form apart, I would, if Los Angeles does take its chance, I appreciate, obviously it's a lot better as it would be on the softer surface, Ryan just to lead all the way. And just gently to start with and then go down that home straight, which seems never ending, everyone. It will really suit Los Angeles and away you go.
Yeah, he probably looks like he is a class above these. You mentioned King's Gambit. He kind of came a totally different route to Los Angeles, I suppose, kind of came up through, won a handicap earlier in the season, then progressing into group company. But Los Angeles, like you mentioned, he was kind of winning Derby trials, went to Epsom, ran a massive race there, and then backed it up with the Cora to beat Ambiente, Friendly and Sunway. The Euphoric might be a bit of a help from there. Declan McDonough on board. You'd imagine he might be pacemaking duties just to help Los Angeles as far as he can go. But yeah, you can imagine Ryan will be fairly handy in Los Angeles. It won't be like Continuous last year when he was nearly dropped out of the back of the screen and pick him up. I'd imagine he'd probably be right up there in the vanguard. And yeah, totally agree. Even though he has to concede the weight to King's Gambit, I think he probably should be a class above, consider if he'd handle the ground. But I wouldn't probably be overly worried, although he is a massive horse. I think he'd probably be a step above these. So in agreement on that one anyway. And we'll go on to the feature race, probably the one that most people are looking forward to across the whole week of York. And what a cracker this is. It has a bit of everything, doesn't it? It has the International Challenge, the Superstar Trios, High Class Mare, of course, specialist there, Alfrela, coming back to York again. But I suppose the headlines are always going to be City of Troy in here. 11 to 10, again, similar to Los Angeles, has eased out in the market, but he was odds on, I think, when a couple of days ago. But 11 to 10 now. What are your thoughts on this one, Tanya? Look, I suppose 10 furlongs at Eclipse, in the Eclipse last time, people were maybe saying, did he need the 1.5 miles? But I think there was probably valid enough excuses for maybe the slightly below par performance there, although he still did win an Eclipse off the back of the Derby, which is something not many horses do, I suppose.
Do we think it was below par when we see what Al Riffa's done since?
Yeah.
We may have been crabbing the run, and then you saw. Take a look again, if you haven't, everyone, at the Coral Eclipse from when they turn for home, and the amount of ground that Al Riffa makes up on City of Troy, and then virtually tries to draw alongside, and City of Troy then comes through in the end. This is a little bit different, this contest, because we are stacked up. We are stacked up with so much talent in this race, so many ingredients, so many factors. Let's start with Maljoom, who should be named Mr. Unlucky, Maljoom, and is moving up from the mile to the 1.25 miles. There's a nice little sort of statement of intent. Now, 2 years ago in the race against Corribius in that Prince of Wales Stakes, must have been one of the unluckiest horses at Royal Ascot. Then we've been waiting ever since. And he ran third to Sharon in the Queen Anne. I mean, that's just, well, the time was so fast, and he backed that up with the run in the Sussex Stakes, and he ran in the Sussex Stakes as if he needed further. That's Maljoom, who will have the burst of acceleration. You've then got Ghostwriter, who will love another crack at City of Troy after that run in the Eclipse himself. He probably was asked for his effort a little bit too soon, arguably, in hindsight, or maybe not, but he's improving all the time. Blue Stocking, goodness me, there was lots of expectation that she was going to go and run the following day in the Yorkshire Oaks, and fair play and very sporting of Rafe and the sponsors and everyone else to put her in this race, because she adds a complete extra dimension, because she was obviously brilliant in the Pretty Polly, and then she met a monster, an absolute monster in the King George, didn't she? She was 5 lengths clear of the remainder, but dropping down in trips will suit her. Obviously, we know about City of Troy's only one blip was the Guineas, but I'm going to be really mean and controversial, because I thought there's Ambient Friendly as well, but Ambient Friendly, how good he is, he keeps coming up against, when he's running over 1.5 miles, he went to challenge Los Angeles and then dropped back. He travelled really well in the Derby. Obviously, he was very impressive in the Lingfield Derby trial, so this 1.25 miles might suit, but then you pick the day to run your 1.25 miles race in the strongest field probably in history for the race. So I'm going to go for a 1-2 in the race for France. We don't know how good Calla Dagnan can be. He's not my winner. He took everyone's breath away with his performance in the King Edward. Now, this is not normal route. I think since 1988, or it's only been done 3 times before, where a King Edward, the 7th Stakes runner, has come and run in here. But of course, he's improving so quickly. He's never run in a Group 1, but with the trainer having scooped to King George already, we've got to pay an utmost respect to him. However, I think Zarachem in this contest, he's improved rapidly himself out of all expectation. He went so well in the Prix Gannet. He didn't go so well in the Prix Gannet. He'd won the race before, then he didn't go well in the Prix Gannet. That made him 33-1 at Ascot against Auguste Rodin. Now, a bit like Goliath at Royal Ascot, watch how much ground Zarachem makes up from Swinley Bottom. He was still last. He had 2 behind him as they approached the final turn. And Maxime Guillon probably thought he was flying from there to about a furlong out. And then Horizon Dare, I think it was, leaned on him and he didn't get the best of runs. Not that he would have beaten Auguste Rodin. No, not at all. Don't. I just think that little bit of acceleration, he's not really had any mention in this race because quite rightly it's all on City of Troy, Caladagnan, Ambient Friendly, and even the Japanese Raider, which should be commended. But he has to be considered because he brings in here top class form, and for 1.25 miles, and Jerome Rainier as well, he brings in another dimension and tool. And I think at the price, Zarachem, for me, has just got it. And if I'm worried about another horse other than City of Troy, is the other French Raider, which is Caladagnan. I don't know how you see it, but I mean, you could have 10 different answers to this and not be surprised.
Yeah, you can make a case for plenty, but like you mentioned, Zarachem, probably one a lot of people are going to overlook. 14-1 there on the back of a close second to Auguste Rodin at Ascot definitely looks a really interesting one. You can see that the French horses will often be underestimated, I suppose, when they come over, but we've seen it time and time again this season. They're well capable of performing to a really high level in the UK. I think City of Troy, I'd fancy him to back up that Eclipse win. Obviously, it's not an easy thing to do for these 3-year-olds, and especially in a race like this. I think it's probably the biggest field in a Juddmonte International for a long, long time, but he is quite a special horse. I am really interested in Ambiente Friendly, how he'll fare, like you said, back to the 10 furlongs for the first time. I suppose, look, you have to commend Connections for trying the Derby trip. They were really kind of hoping that he'd stay out and win his Classic over the 1.5 miles, but chopping back here, I suppose a lot of people had question marks. Did he really stay out the 1.5 miles? He travels so strongly throughout his races. He could be a real danger to City of Troy. Like we saw at Epsom, he travelled so strongly before maybe City of Troy took control of the race late on, but I do think City of Troy will back it up here. It's not maybe as exciting as your pick for the French one too, but I do think City of Troy 11-10. Look, it's a very strong field, but I think he could be proving his super status here. But I can definitely see the case there for Zarachem. 14-1 for the French each way. It's a much braver pick than me. So we'll be lauding you if he comes out in front on Wednesday. But we'll go for actually a wrap up of maybe a couple of handicappers that we might have picked out on the Wednesday first before we go on to Thursday's action. So Tanya, I can go to you first if you want to just give a quick mention to anything you spotted in those handicaps.
Yeah, in the 150, We Never Stop, who'll be lower down the markets. He ran really, really well at Goodwood. Not that the form will tell you that. I think the form will say a big fat 7 by his name. But as he came down the hill, he had a huge bump. Well, he ducked and bumped and didn't like the downhill run of Goodwood. And he still then, despite losing a few lengths, then came again to only be beaten about 4 lengths. He's in the 150. He might be worth a little bit of each way. He's drawn well. That's the key. In that first race, you tend to need to be drawn above 13 in that first. And then will it finally be Divine Comedy's time after a brilliant effort behind I Pledge Allegiance in Royal Ascot. Divine Comedy obviously going up in weight because it just keeps improving, but York could suit him as well, and he doesn't seem to stop improving. He's in the 410, so I like him.
He was a big nap, if I remember, for you on our Royal Ascot. he was, God, he must have been double figures, but he was backed heavily enough. But yeah, I was actually in Ascot. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I had a bit of a bet on him after that tip, so hopefully he can get it over the line for a claim a crier Fraser. But I actually have one in this race as well. I'm just looking at the Irish Challenge in here. Extensio for Pat O'Donnell and Joey Sheridan. He kind of gave the family a massive winner there when he won in Fairy House a few weeks ago under, I suppose, the trainer's daughter, Sylvia O'Donnell. She claims the £10. But just looking back, watching back that race, he won it kind of hands and heels, as easy as you like. He's gone up £4 for it, off a career high mark. But this is a horse, like a 7-year-old, but he doesn't seem to be stopping his improvement at all over the last 2 or 3 seasons. I think looking back over his 7 runs, his last 7 months, he's only been out of the first 3 once, I think, and very, very consistent horse. Although he's off a career high rating here, I think this 2-mile trip is right up his alley. Joey Sheridan has a good relationship with the horse. He won the Tipperary Cup on him last summer over this trip as well. He's been over to the UK a few times for these big handicaps. Look, very, very consistent. I think his last run shows kind of the health he's in. Maybe he disappointed Connection slightly first time out, but kind of quotes from his trainer said he just wasn't, he didn't get him fit enough for that race. But reverse form with the winner that day, looked like a strong enough handicap in Fairy House. Like I said, trip is perfect. He loves rattling ground as well. The good to form at York should suit him perfectly. Career high mark, like I said, but he's 9-1. I think he could be a bit of an each way shout there. He's just a horse who kind of isn't finding any end to his improvement so far, and to be nice to get the O'Donnells another big day in the sun there after a brilliant win. I think won by the trainer's wife Una and ridden by Sylvia last time. It was a great day, so hopefully he can go on again and give him a nice win in York. But we'll go on to Thursday's racing then. And I think the first race we're going to have a look at, I get my thing. Oh yeah, it's the 150. Sorry, the Bet Lowther Stakes. The fillies Group 2 over the 6 furlongs. Really interesting contest here again. I suppose a couple of fillies who went to Royal Ascot. The favourite in the market there is Leo Vanni for Watnan Racing. 2-1 there for Carl Burke and James Doyle. She was an impressive winner of the Queen Mary Stakes. And then we have the Ballydoyle filly Heaven's Gate. She was 3rd in the Albany to stablemate, but she's been good since she won the Ballyhane Stakes at Nace a few weeks ago. She's in there 5-2 for Ryan Moore. I think it's 9-1 bar those, or 6-1 bar those. Sorry, Tanya. What was your thoughts on this one?
Well, obviously, Heaven's Gate, I think, is very strong form, considering that she kicked on in the Albany, unbeknownst to Wayne, Mr. Lawton. When he kicked on, he didn't know what was going to happen, and he was... bless him. He had fairy godmother. But what it did do, Heaven's Gate drew through, I think it was Simmering, and it was a good old contest. And then Heaven's Gate went on to be beaten by Arabian Dusk at Newmarket in the Group 2. But Heaven's Gate is tough. So I wouldn't blame anyone if they just say, right, I'm going to stick with Heaven's Gate. It's not going to be played like... she was certainly at Newmarket and or Ascot, so that's no problem. I've got no problem if you stick with that. I'm going to go with Betty Clover, though. The Eve Johnson Hounds had a phenomenal season. Betty Clover is as tough as Heaven's Gate, rings in equally good form. Now, you may say that Betty Clover was well beaten by Leah Varney and the Queen Mary, but the trickiness at Royal Ascot and the Queen Mary's, you've got the horses spread across the track. So Betty Clover never really saw Leah Varney. It was a different kind of side. So she was 8. She was beaten 5 lengths. Leah Varney, yes, a very, very good run we haven't seen since. And obviously Leah Varney looked as though it could run a little bit further. We have seen Betty Clover since. And the Princess Margaret form, in which Betty Clover helped out Simmering no end, has worked out really well, because I say that because in the race at Ascot, that Princess Margaret, Betty Clover and Simmering were positioned on the far side together, and Betty Clover went first, and Simmering then was able to be drawn through and won. And we all know what Simmering's gone and done, has gone and confirmed the form in France. Betty Clover is just tough, and you know what you're going to get. There was a whole host of money in that race, though, for Tales of the Heart, who was in the middle of the track, and Betty Clover still outran it. Now, we've got a wonderful little compact, intimate little race. So you haven't got them spread right across the track. They'll all be cat and mouse looking at one another to see what's happening. So even though you've got Miss LeMay, who made sort of burst, who won very well at Navan, as franked, all interwoven form with Betty Clover and Leah Varney, and you've got Celadine, who for me, I feel sorry for Celadine because she was alongside Big Mojo at Goodwood, and she was never going to go that fast, but she did. She expended so much energy trying to keep up with Big Mojo over the 5 furlongs. I think she'll be a big sigh of relief that you haven't got that in the race. But that said, I appreciate Leah Varney was 5 lengths ahead of Betty Clover. Betty Clover's already got good form here, and the good form at Ascot, and the fact that Eve's having a great run. I think we'll see a fairy tale win for George Adobe, who has ridden this filly to perfection in all rides so far.
Nice 12-1 shout there. Like I said, form looking strong all the way through. I was actually quite keen on Heaven's Gate for this one myself, and the Ballydoyle filly. Kind of like you, I'm not going to mention everything you said again. You went through it a bit before, but look, she was third in the Albany. The form of that race, like you said, really, really strong. Simmering second, a fairy godmother first, who looks like, you know, she could be a superstar 2-year-old. She's obviously not the best 2-year-old filly in Ballydoyle, but she's got very, very strong form. Even going back to her maiden win back in May, I think it was, she beat January. I was actually in Tipperary last week racing. In January, she was a really impressive winner of a listed race down there. She's kind of gone strength to strength since then. I just think her form stacked up strongly. You kind of mentioned a lot of it already, but I think Heaven's Gate can kick on from here. The Ballydoyle 2-year-old fillies look really, really strong this year. While she mightn't be top of the pecking order, I'd say she could drive on and be another nice one for them. Leah Vanny, I have respect for, but haven't seen her since Royal Ascot, which is maybe a slight worry, but she did what had to be done that day, I suppose, beat Mighty Eru for Gavin Cromwell. But I do think the form of the Albany is stronger with Simmering and the other Ballydoyle fillies, names are out of my head now, in front of her. I think, you know, it was a really stacked race, and I think Heaven's Gate can get her big day in the sun here, and this one I would hope anyway. But we'll have a chat about the feature race in the day then on Thursday next, the Yorkshire Oaks. And like Wednesday's feature, it's not one to disappoint. I suppose we've got the kind of star older mare Emily Upjohn coming back in here again, Kieran Schumacher on board for the Gosdens, and then we've got some really star younger fillies as well, Content and You Got to Me, first and second from the Irish Oaks. A stacked contest again, Tanya. Are you going for the younger fillies, or are you sticking with the older mares?
I think I'll stick with the younger fillies. I just think it's a little bit of an insult the way that, first of all, the Irish Oaks formers in the market has just been put to one side. And yeah, I just think that's unfair, because both You Got to Me and Content have earned their places. They've done nothing wrong. Content's taken a while to really warm up. And I say that, I think the first time we saw Content run really well was against, obviously, Blue Stocking and Emily Upjohn. That's a fair run. That is, I mean, it's Group 1 and it was only beaten 4 or so lengths. And then, you have to feel sorry, because I don't think Ryan got the best of runs in the Curragh after that in the Irish Oaks. It came from absolutely nowhere, and by the time he came to challenge You Got Me, he's probably, the pair of them, he used up what energy they had. He had to make up a lot of ground, go through a lot of traffic to tackle You Got Me. But that's not to say You Got Me shouldn't have won. This is a horse that finished 4th in the Oaks, and then I think in the Ribblesdale was made too much use of on the in the latter stages, and they learnt from that, and that's why they grabbed the Curragh win. Now, obviously Emily Upjohn, I think with me, I'm trying to weigh up a little bit by, like, in Spiral, where do we stand with Emily Upjohn? Obviously she's very, very classy. She's got Group 1 successes. She's was overhauled by Blue Stocking in the closing stages. It's not a disaster. Her run in the Coronation Cup, that was just one of the Riders of the Year by Ryan Moore. But you have to start somewhere. She'd obviously been in Maidan before that. But I'm putting her to one side. Queen of the Pride, I think, heads towards the top of the market, but she's had to get there, whereas Content and You Got Me, they're at that rating, whereas Queen of the Pride has has got there. I don't know how much more improvement to come, but I do appreciate it might have been a little bit slippy at Haydock, and we don't know how much further she'd be at Tiffany. But all that aside, you've got Lava Stream in this race. Now, I had to see what went wrong at the Curragh for Lava Stream, and I watched the race from as soon as the stalls opened till about 3 furlongs. And they go behind the trees, and just as they come out of the trees, I think either she clipped heels or the two horses she was trying to make her way through have come together and she's had to snatch up, or Danny Tubhope's had to snatch up. That's cost her about 3 or 4 lengths and a lot of confidence. And although she travelled well into the Irish Oaks, the confidence might have gone, and that might have been her race over after 3 furlongs. And I'm going to hope that. That's me pulling fingers tightly crossed, because once again she's found herself at that big price again, where she ran a cracker in the Riversdale, I think it was, at Ascot, or she ran a cracker at Ascot, and I think York will suit her in a smaller field. She's not going to have to be so far behind. And yeah, I mean, I'll forgive her that Curragh run, but I do expect that if there is going to be a problem, it's going to be either Content or You Got Me that beats me, because I think the Irish Oaks form has just totally been overlooked here in the market. Obviously Content second in, but poor old You Got Me, she deserves to be higher up.
Interesting enough comments from connections after You Got To Me won the Oaks. They were kind of saying, normally she's ridden handily, and she kind of ended up back in the field accidentally. I suppose they had to go to plan B. Do you think they're going to reverse back to the old tactics of having her right up there, or will they try and drop her in here? Would you say? I'd imagine they'll probably try and drop her in.
Yes and no, but who's going to lead then? Yeah, I'm looking, maybe I've just looked down, Sea Theme won't help you out, Mistral Star won't help you out. I think they could go back to the tactics, a different type of track, whereas I think you might get overexcited, over enthusiasm, we'll kick and we've got this. A bit like I mentioned, different dynamic. I mentioned earlier in a great Voltigeur that Los Angeles might wind it up. You could do the same, similar kind of tactics on You Got Me, but knowing though that you've got to be cautious, because Content won't get stuck in the same sort of traffic problems that it did. Yeah, it's this is how on earth are you going to ride this race? Because you can either sit behind, but sit behind what? It could be run slowly, or You Got Me to say, catch me if you can. It's a good dynamic.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting tactically for sure. You kind of mentioned it earlier, but I thought Hector Crouch really won the race in the Curragh that day. He kind of moved at all the right times, managed to maybe inadvertently keep Ryan Moore in for as long as possible on Content by making his move first. Tactics will have a massive role in this. I'd say 8-runner field, like you said, Ryan Moore is probably going to keep this simple. I don't think he's going to get into as much trouble in Content. A smaller field should suit her. You kind of mentioned it earlier as well. I think since stepping up to kind of the middle distance trips, 10 furlongs and up to the 1.5 miles, she's kind of been a different filly. Like, she was tried in the French Guineas and in the Coronation over the mile, but over this kind of extended trip, she just seems to be a different filly. Like you said, Emily Upjohn, she has to reverse form with her, I suppose, from the Pretty Polly. But I think, up at the extra 2 furlongs here should suit her better as well. And like you said, Emily Upjohn, which one will we get on the day is kind of a bit of a question mark as well. I think Ballydoyle are going to be gunning to get Content out and in front on this day. She'd be Galileo's 100 Group 1 winner as well, which would be massive. I'd probably fancy her in the mark in this one. Just like you said, maybe they're being a little bit overlooked in the market there. I think 5 to 2 isn't a bad price about her. And You Got To Me, just interesting how she will be ridden. I think maybe the change in tactics might have been the difference to her last time. And like I said, I think Hector Crouch gave her just a peach on the day. I probably do think Content can turn the form around if everything goes right for her on the day. So Content for me, and maybe an each way one for you in that one. But it's a really interesting race, with the kind of clash of the older and younger fillies and Oaks form coming into it as well. So we'll give a look at the 4:10 then, just one last race before we get kind of a skim of anything else on the day. It's the Henry Cecil Galtres Stakes. It's over the 1.5 miles as well. It's for fillies and mares listed contest. It's a pretty open contest, I suppose. The 3-year-old fillies taking on the 4-year-olds again. Just in Time seems to be the kind of clear-cut market leader in there for William Haggis and Tom Marquand. William Haggis obviously won it last year as well. She's in there 11-8, and it seems to be around 8-1 bar those. Is she as far ahead of these as the market seems to suggest, Tanya? What do you think?
I don't think so. Obviously, she'll be well backed. William Haggis does love having winners, and See Just in Time certainly showed some acceleration at Kempton, but there was no horses of the calibre that she will meet in this contest in that lineup. So it's really to show and give you a confidence boost. Carmology will be a big issue because Carmology won't stop. You're going to have to go and beat Carmology, as proved by what Verbier had to do at York, and for Carmology, he's run the last 2 races at the track, so knows the track fair and proper. Then we've got Davinia Grace, who ran really lovely at Newmarket and kept galloping, and Billy Loughnane's earned the ride. I make it, though, stepping back from both of those, and make it between Noisy Jazz, because I've never seen such a big filly. She's enormous, and she was 25-1. She's only had 1 start. She was 25-1 at Newmarket. Okay, we don't really know what she beat. She beat Charlotte's Web, who was favourite, and has been beaten since. But she looked as though she was just going down to the start when she crossed the line still. But then I suppose Harry Bentley was very kind in the fact that he didn't sort of resort to the whip or anything. He just made sure that she won, and she won easily, and she thrived in going up the rising ground, and that was over a mile, and any further is not going to be an issue because she's out of Ulysses. So she's really exciting, but I think you're going to love my selection. The trainer's won the race before. She won the race a couple of years ago with Forbearance, and she runs Satin here. I thought that for Satin's first race, which was only on the 14th of August at Gowran, there was lots and lots of money. It was a 4-horse race, so first of all, it's going to be ridden very, very tactically. There was plenty of support for Common Practice. The horse was finished 3rd. Smooth Tom, I think, Highland Bling set the race up unbeknownst to Highland Bling for Smooth Tom. Common Practice had no answer, and Satin in the race was carrying 10 stone 1, which was like giving chunks and chunks. And in the end, she got a bump or got crowded not long after the start. She didn't get any cover, and she conceded lots of weight and still only got beat 5.5 lengths on a debut. It's a good starter because people look at the form and think, what was that? But without appreciating how good the form is and how good form she has got. And seeing as though, as I mentioned, Jessica Harrington's won this before, and you've got a jockey called Ryan Moore on board. It's going to be very, very good for her. She's a lovely each way price, and she just gives her all. Even in that 4-runner race, I felt she was even trying to claw them back. So I'll go for Satin.
Yeah, definitely an eye-catching jockey booking there as well. Like you said, I was actually in Goran last week when she ran, and yeah, she looked like she'd come on for the one as well. So an interesting one there as well for Jessica Harrington. And the only Irish one in the race, I'm going to have to go with you on this one because I had made a really strong case for something that wasn't even declared. I was looking at it earlier on this morning. I was making a case for the Donegal O'Brien Lady Doris, who had won actually in Goran as well in the Marble Stakes, but she didn't show up here, so we'd have to go with your selection there, Satin. Ryan Moore booked for Jessica Harrington. I suppose you can't go too wrong with that. But we'll wrap up Thursday, but we'll give a few, maybe anything in the handicap. I can go first there if you like, because I didn't contribute to that one whatsoever. So I'm going to have a look at the sales race on the day of the Galtres Premier Yearling Stakes. And I just think Arizona Blaze is an absolute standout in this race. Be very surprised if he can't win a race of this caliber, considering his earlier form this year. he was kind of competing with the best of the 2-year-olds early on in the season. If you look back through his maiden form, he was second. Sorry, not his maiden form. He won his maiden first time out, but then he was second to Whistle Jacket in the first Flyer Stakes at the Curragh. Went on and won the Marble Hill Stakes, beating Camille Pissarro. Went to Royal Ascot. He was third in the Norfolk Group 2. You know, he's been competing in nearly all of the Group 2 or Group 1 races throughout the season for the 2-year-olds in Ireland. Most recently, he was third in the Keeneland to Babouche and Whistle Jacket. Whistle Jacket obviously went out and won his Group 1 next time. So I just think his form is probably going to be head and shoulders above the rest in this. I was kind of interested to see what price he'd open up at. I think 9-2 is really, really fair in there. I think, yeah, he's just a standout in that one. I'd be surprised if there's anything with the level of form he has in there, because like I said, he's been competing against the best of the 2-year-olds all the way through the year, and he's probably deserves to get another one on the board. He hasn't gotten his head in front since that Marble Hill Stakes win, but again, Adrian Murray, maybe his horse is not totally flying this year, but I think Arizona Day should be able to get off the mark in that one. And I'll pass it over to you, Tanya, if you have anything else on the Thursday.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the 5:20 and number 11 Alpha Kalenic, Tom Eves for Craig Lidster. Alpha Kalenic has improved out of all recognition in the fact that she's won her last 4 races. They'll be looking to follow Alpha Kalenic. She's drawn in right in the centre, stall 9. The only trouble is I feel that it might not get to her. It might be a little bit of white knuckle ride. You'll be in a 3 or 4-way photo, but they'll stack up behind her. I think she's just got sufficient improvement to hang on in there. She's just been a revelation, and fair play to her.
Brilliant stuff. So that is Thursday wrapped up, and we'll just have a small chat about the Norfolk. Obviously, we've no declarations yet, so we could be talking about something that's not even going to transpire. So we'll just have a quick chat about it, and I suppose we can assume that most of the major protagonists are going to show up in here. And it's a race that I really love. I kind of loads of good memories of it. I suppose going all the way back to Soul Power in 2010, he regained it in 2014. Freddie Lynham. Loads of kind of repeat winners. It's kind of loads of them would stick out in the memory. And this year's renewal looks pretty good as well. You've got the Australian mare coming back again as for Henry Dwyer, Oisin Murphy, Big Evs. They're kind of renewing their rivalry from Ascot to Goodwood. They're probably the two to start on anyway. Tanya, I know you were a big Evs fan when we did our Royal Ascot preview. Obviously disappointed a bit there, but bounced back again at Goodwood.
Yeah, it did, and everything fell in Big Ev's favour. Was able to get out and run in a rhythm, and in contrast, that wasn't the same on the near side of the track for Asfoora and indeed Believing. Those two didn't have the best of runs. I mean, I looked closely at the coverage. I thought quite bizarrely that if you look close enough, Asfoora's saddle may have slipped. I'll be totally wrong, because otherwise that would have been reported, but it just didn't look right. But she got beaten by a whisker, but it sets up beautifully for the Nunthorpe. But I tell you else who ran brilliantly, and I know that's been flagged up by many shrewder people than me, was the last year's winner in Live the Dream, who ran an absolute belter at Goodwood and showed up really, really well. Now, if you look at 2023's Nunthorpe, Sean Curran, from after 2 furlongs to 3 furlongs, he put in this amazing spurt on Live the Dream, which then allowed him to have a 2-length comfort, gave a breather then, and then kicked on. If you watch the replay again and again and again. That's what I thought anyway. By then, Big Eves was under pressure. The others all sat back, and lo and behold, Live the Dream goes on and wins a Nunthorpe. As you mentioned, there's horses that have come out and repeated it, and Live the Dream's Goodwood run suggests that it could certainly do all that again. The only horses that could keep pace on that day were Highfield Princess, this was a year ago, Makarova, and Bradsell, who has not been mentioned, but may well declare Bradsell after that brilliant win at Deauville. We don't know the weather as well. That might have an impact. There has been sort of a little bit of mention of rain on the Thursday, but looking at the forecast, it's nothing to change the ground. It's just to probably help the track out if the rain that's forecast comes. So that's all good. But I believe that this race, or if you look at the stats, it's always been good for the girls, the Nunthorpe. We've had some really the likes of Jawala and obviously Highfield Princess and Mecca's Angel. It's always been good for the girls in Nunthorpe. So then you look at the likes of Makarova, who ran well in it last year. Asfura, of course, who's your big, powerful Australian mare and will be there or thereabouts. But I think Believing may win the Nunthorpe this time round. Believing went twice, fair enough, at Royal Ascot in the King Charles III Stakes, ran an absolute belter, I thought. Then went to the 6 furlong race later in the week. The Curragh came out. The Curragh, well done at the Curragh, won the Sapphire, beating Makarova again in third. And then at Goodwood was on the kept getting bumped. And that's got to take this race is going to be won in whiskers, whoever takes part. It's going to be so exciting and so thrilling. I think if the rain doesn't come, we'll be looking at the stopwatch. They're not going to hold back here. These are going to fly, and it's small margins. However, Believing for me, once again, Ryan Moore, Believing. And if you look at the report after, I think it is Goodwood, it was after the Curragh. It says Ryan's keen to go for the Nunthorpe, but trainer wants the Flying Five. Look where we are. We're at the Nunthorpe with Ryan Moore aboard. So he's no doubt got a plan. It'll all be down to the draw as well. So I'm going with Ryan, George Bowie and Believing in the Nunthorpe. It's just going to be electrifying. I hope they all declare, and I hope they all get a clear run. And just hold on to your seats because you'll be flying in this.
Yeah, it's always a brilliant contest, and I suppose looking forward to tomorrow to seeing what's declared. It'd be interesting to see if Katie McGivern declares her So Majestic. It would be a first group one winner for her. To be a big winner if you won 66-1. But it'd be nice to see Katie over there. She's done very well with her sprinters this year, kind of young trainer up and coming in Ireland. But yeah, it'll be a cracker. Looking forward to the declarations tomorrow. But we're kind of wrapped up there. We won't go through anything else on Friday without the declarations. I actually might just give a little mention, the convivial. Just some really eye-catching entries in this. It's obviously £100,000 maiden for 2-year-olds who haven't won more than twice, and Aidan has made some really eye-catching entries in this. You've got Ballet Slippers, obviously Out of Magical. Baidu Bowie has been second and third in 2 Curragh maidens, was second to a daughter of Winter last time at the Curragh. But I thought that Acapulco Bay, if he gets declared, he was really, really eye-catching in a really strong Curragh maiden last weekend. He was second to a stablemate, Delacroix, who was odds-on favourite. Ryan Moore rode the favourite. Wayne rode Acapulco Bay, and they were ridden absolutely opposites. Delacroix went out and made all kind of asserted his dominance on the race early on, but Acapulco Bay was dropped out the back. But I think anyone rewatched that race, I think his progress through the race was really, really eye-catching. And if he showed up here, I'd say he'd be fairly hard to beat. And Paddy Toomey has Admiral Churchill in there as well, who was another eye-catcher at Galway, win behind Rocket Cash. And I'd say 2 of those, look, whoever gets declared in there, but I think Acapulco Bay definitely went into plenty of notebooks after the Curragh. So it will be interesting to see who gets sent there from the Irish Challenge. But it looks like a cracker, as does all of the week, I suppose. But Tanya, I suppose before we wrap up, I'll ask you for maybe a small fancy for the Ebor and possibly a nap from the other races we were talking as well.
Yeah, no problem at all. Ebor, I'm hoping not so sleepy runs. I know he's 12, and I know that there'll be younger legs that may accelerate more, but he's been running brilliantly, and with no doubt there'll be some each-way concessions and each-way terms. It'd be very hard to push him out of the first 6 not so sleepy because he is so savvy. But in all seriousness, a selection to actually win the race, I think it will go to Ireland. I think it will go to Gavin Cromwell and My Mate Mozzie, who ran brilliantly at Royal Ascot and then backed it up somehow, getting so close as it did to Nürburgring, which was a really phenomenal effort, I felt. My Mate Mozzie, for me, to win the Ebor. Should that declare? It might not declare, you just don't know. Same with Not So Sleepy, but there'll be my 2, Not So Sleepy each way, and My Mate Mozzie to win the Ebor. And you want to nap. So here we go then. I'm going to be very, very I like a fair price, and I think in the Juddmonte International, the French raider Zarachem is a really fair price. This is a horse that finished behind, ran really well at Ascot last time out. Zarachem finished really nicely in the Prince of Wales Stakes. Somehow he got a place. He was crowded about half a furlong out. He ran poor in the Prix Gannet. He'd won the Prix d'Harcourt before that. Went to the Prix Gannet. I think he was favourite for the Prix Gannet and ran really poor. So that brought him into the Ascot race at 33-1. Turning for home, he only had 2 behind him, and he flew. And because he was going so well, he then was crowded in the last 200 yards or so and just missed out getting even closer. With that sort of acceleration in Group 1, he's going to be a danger to all of the Juddmonte International. And I just love the fact he's been overlooked and not mentioned. Perhaps a 1-2 for France in that race. And that Zarachem.
A brave selection. Hopefully it'll come off you at the French 1-2 in the Juddmonte International. I'm going to go for Arizona Blaze myself in that sales race on the Thursday. I just think I kind of made the point of it earlier, but his form in kind of Group 2, 3, Group 1 company even in Ireland, he's been kind of behind the best that we have to offer anyway, behind the likes of Whistle Jacket. He beat Camille Pissarro, behind Babouche last time out. I think he should be able to step up and win a race like that. It's obviously a very valuable contest, but I think 9-2 there looks a fairly fair price about him. And my selection for the Ebor, we'll actually have a show on Friday, I should mention, with Don McLean looking at the Ebor and the Curragh. But I'll give a quick mention to one. I think we mentioned it on our podcast yesterday, Queenstown for Aidan O'Brien. There's just been a lot of talk about this horse, and there has been a bit of an anti-post gamble on him as well. I actually listened to a feature with Aidan yesterday or at the weekend anyway, on Racing TV. Obviously he's been kind of sparring with Kyprios all year long. He was second, I think, in both starts before Kyprios went out and won the Gold Cup in Ascot. He was due to run in Ascot himself in the Queen Alexandra Stakes, pulled out late on. I think the vets weren't totally happy with the way he was moving. I heard Aidan saying he was being used as a lead horse for Kyprios and all his work, and he was maybe just a bit battered and bruised and came to Ascot a bit stiff after that. But they said they took him away from Kyprios in the last few weeks at home, and he seems to have gotten the sparkle back in his eye. They think he's pretty well handicapped off America 107. I'm just listening to the quotes from Aidan the other day. Just that form, sparring with the likes of Kyprios, he could be maybe a step above his mark of 107 off the back of that, and he's having a bit of an easier time at home as well, which should freshen him up for this, you'd like to think. And I suppose just seeing a Ballydoyle gamble in a big handicap doesn't come around too often, I suppose, so it's always one to keep note of, I suppose. But Tanya, thanks very much for all your contributions. I probably kept you on this for way too long, but it was really interesting chat, I suppose, about a cracking week. But thanks a million for coming on, and thanks everyone for listening. If you're going to have a bet over the week at York, make sure to gamble responsibly and tune back in Friday as well. We'll be back with Don McLean to preview Saturday's action at the Curragh and at York.